Land at AirInsight, and my guest and friend, Nitin Saran in India. Hi, Nitin.
Good morning, Addison. How are you?
Good evening. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
It's been a while since we last spoke, but it's so really our monthly calls become a quarterly in this case. In
It has been, yes, it has, and I think it's just there's been so much change happening in the last several months that
Correct.
I wouldn't call it overwhelming, but it's keeping everyone fresh, let's just say.
Right, fresh and out of trouble, hopefully. So I
Yes.
want to cover some ideas here with you about what's going on in India. Firstly, the Cape Town Convention. Now,
Yes.
this has been a bone in the throat of leasing companies with Indian customers, right? What's
It has
going
been one of the biggest boxes of the checklist that has remained unchecked.
and now it's been checked?
Well, almost. Let's just say it's been checked in pencil. We're just waiting for the formal pen overlay to happen.
So what is the for those of us who don't are not lawyers, what does this mean for India as a market?
So you see, first of all, the two largest hurdles that were required under our legal process have been crossed. So it's the bill which was introduced in February this year has formally been passed by both houses of parliament. So it's it's virtually a law. The only step that is required is a formal assent of the President of India. The President of India being the ceremonial head in a sense. So she at the present moment would have to sign that bill because it's been passed by both houses of parliament. However, the act, once it's in force, also provides for lots of other rules and regulations which will come in at a subsequent date. So those are equally important. So the road ahead is slightly long, but at least the end is in vision. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. From a
Okay.
practical point of view, what it means is that India becomes a somewhat safer jurisdiction for banks and leasing companies leasing their assets because the convention now has the force of law. Does that mean things are going to be flawless? I don't think so. Does that mean there are not going to be hiccups along the way? Like, absolutely not. So it's a start of a new process, but it's a very positive move.
Okay. Well, it certainly brings India in line with other key markets. And of course, India
Absolutely.
being such a huge and growing, exploding really aviation market, this is really critical for everybody in the leasing business and the financing business.
It is, and a lot of the feedback I've got is that several leasing companies have already reached their threshold of exposure to India, and this will allow them to increase that exposure. So there are lots of them who have said, "Look, we want to do more business in India, but because of the legal challenges, we're just simply prohibited from doing so because of our internal restrictions."
Right. And if you think about how when the Russian-Ukraine war started and how the Russians literally stole planes from Western leasing companies, I would imagine the insurance companies and the leasing companies got burned really badly there and are quite rightly shy to take on more risk. Let's move on to the Indian airline industry because the airline industry in India is, if nothing else, dynamic.
Yes.
Let's go to the big ones. Indigo, what's the news there?
Well, Indigo is just it's slow and steadily chugging along to higher heights, let's say. Very interesting news coming out of them, at least from the aircraft angle, that they've already had some of their first ATRs for so long that they're returning them back to the lessors. So I believe December 2017 were when they introduced the ATR. So the first couple of leases are already up. So that's a big. Uh, it can either mean that we've been doing this for a very long time, or that time passes very quickly. But it's a fantastic thing to think about.
And they're
So
still
that's the
taking
first thing.
they're taking delivery of replacements, right?
They are, yes. They had a total of 50 on order, and they are taking replacements. And there's a lot there's a lot that's happening in that space because a lot of those aircraft are being refinanced. We've done a couple of them ourselves. So it's very interesting how the same set of aircraft can keep several aspects of the aviation industry busy throughout their lifetime.
Amazing. Then, of course, they're also growing internationally, right? Indigo's stretching its wings, so to speak.
It is a substantial shift from their initial model with the 787-9s they're taking on damp lease, where they've already announced that they're going to start international operations to Amsterdam and Manchester. They've already started 787 operations to Bangkok and things like that, which just shows how robust and how bullish they are on the Indian international traveler. I'm not even going to say low cost traveler, but just the Indian international traveler.
You know, Nitin, I think one thing that is under discussed or maybe under noticed perhaps is that Indigo is doing something very unusual here. They're exposing themselves to Boeing. They have
Yes.
been a tried and true tied at the hip with their relationship with Airbus.
Yes.
This exposes them to something different, and who knows where that might go. You know, they had the same thing with the 777 and the Turkish relationship.
Hmm.
So it's interesting what happens here.
Absolutely. And
Who
I think
knows where
it's
this goes?
absolutely, and it's smart on them because they're the ones who know how to negotiate a good deal. And the best way to start by negotiate a good deal is to have two competitors fight it out amongst themselves. So that's a very smart move, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. If nothing else, that reflects absolutely a smart strategic move. How about Air
Absolutely.
India Express? Okay, so they've
Hmm.
reached like 100 airplanes now. Um, they um, they are amazing.
Hmm.
The Chinese decision to ground the Max was probably the best news that India ever got. Between Air India
Absolutely.
Express and Akasa, wow.
Hmm. I know. I'll be honest. I was taken aback a couple of months ago when, in my head, Air India Express still has the 10 737-800s, and I was shocked to see how large their fleet has got. And from a legal perspective, it's very interesting. They're handling all of this in house, and they're doing a fabulous job with it. And it's 100 aircraft is no joke. So
Yeah, that's for sure.
mhm, mhm. So
Amazing.
it's interesting. It's very interesting how they end up, how they go, how it eventually ends up in the larger Air India, under the umbrella of the larger Air India name. But it's definitely very encouraging,
Right.
and that's more aircraft means more jobs, means a larger industry. So it's only a win-win.
Right. And of course, the MRO that comes with it. In fact, I wrote a story about this about, I don't know, maybe 2, 3 weeks ago about how India has actually ended up saving Boeing's inventory problem
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely.
because the planes that are going to India are often over 1,000 days old.
Yes.
So it's absolutely amazing how these two airlines, Akasa and Air India Express, have come to the help of solving that
Hmm.
problem.
And
So
interestingly, also just to add, Addison, sorry to cut you off, but let's
fine.
not forget the Indigo 737 Max wet leases they've got with Qatar. That's, now when you look for a ticket to fly anywhere via Doha, it's very likely that you're going to get a Qatar 737 Max, but operated by Indigo. So that's
Right.
another interesting
Yeah.
aspect.
So I saw that they've taken. I mean, there's this continuous just give us planes, give us planes, give us seats.
Hmm.
It's absolutely
Hmm.
incredible. Um, Talking about Air India, the mothership, they seem to be going through a lot of refreshing, doing cabins, repainting
Yes.
planes.
Well, that's it's good that this is happening somewhat in-house. At least some of the A320s are now being, sent down south near Bangalore to be, refurbished, new seats, new interiors, etc. I had a very interesting insight to that the other day. One of my friends who flies for Air India was basically told to fly this aircraft down to one of their maintenance facilities. And it's a very interesting facility because it has no landing aids. So it's one of those airstrips which, post dark, post 5 p.m., you can't land there because it's purely visual. And that's where they're doing all of the refurbishment, at least for the A320. And on the long haul side, which actually got me a bit positive, I've not had a negative outlook on Air India, but I think because of their supply chain issues that they're facing for refurbishment of their workhorse, the 777, their product has suffered tremendously. And the good news was that one of the first 777-300ERs came out from a interim refurbishment, not the final one that they've released to the world, but an upgradation of the seats and the seat covers, the upholstery, etc. So overall, a very pleasant looking, which will lead to a pleasant experience scenario, but slow and steady.
Right. Well, we're going to come back. I think we should come back to talk about that whole MRO thing in a minute. But you mentioned in an email to me this good point here about the business jet market. That's something very interesting.
You'll be surprised, Addison. More than scheduled operations, we are working more. We're doing more transactions on the business jet side. It's not as well organized, and it's still at a very nascent stage of people purchasing aircraft. But we are seeing a massive explosion in that field, whether it's foreign fractional ownership entrants wanting to come into the Indian market. There, it's a we have a huge influx of queries coming in almost on a weekly basis for new people wanting to set up in India. We are also on the verge of the government coming out with certain rules and regulations regarding fractional ownership, which is a very sensible thing to do because in India, especially where you've got fairly wealthy individuals, but they're not all that wealthy to be able to buy, some of the larger business jets. You put three or four of them together, and they very well can. So the laws currently don't allow fractional ownership. So that's one set of rules and regulations that hopefully will come in soon. The other one and the other representations which have been made to the government by the various business jet associations is to reduce the customs duty. So currently, if I wanted to buy myself, let's say a Gulfstream or any private jet or any aircraft for that matter, when I import that into India, I'll have to pay about 35% of the invoice value as customs duty. So it's prohibitive, let's say the least.
Right. Well, actually, that backs very, very nicely into this recent bit of news that I saw that in the Indian government would like, or the aviation minister, is interested in starting the assembly or manufacturing, perhaps, of commercial airplanes in India.
Yes.
And as you and I have discussed before, it's only a matter of time. Airbus has the military, the turboprop being built in India.
Mm-hmm.
Embraer people have said to me, not yet, but we're looking. Boeing is getting pressurized. So
absolutely, and that is the need of the hour. I think that's as we briefly discussed, we have the personnel, we have the training facilities to train those personnel, and very importantly, we speak English. I think that's one major win. It's at least communication may not be the easiest because English is not the first language, but at the same time, you're not losing anything in translation. There's emails can be read. There's no, there are no hiccups from that perspective. So that gives us a big advantage over the rest of the world. Well, not the rest of the world, but the non-English speaking world.
Shall we say that region of the world?
That region of the world. That's correct.
Right. So the interesting thing is when we talk to people in supply chain, the big issue today, they talk about, we don't have enough forging in the world for the engines that we need to make. Okay, all those things are structural. The biggest problem people are talking about is the lack of skilled people. You just can't like what one person explained to me. He said we use CNC machines to make parts, and we have these 65-year-old people who've been doing this for a long time. These machines are incredibly expensive, incredibly. You have to be well trained, and the material we're working with, titanium, fancy metals, alloys, that stuff is also expensive. You don't want to waste anything. Well, during COVID, we had to be careful not to lose these people because once they're gone, they're never coming back. Who's going to train the apprentice? How many times is the apprentice going to break the CNC machine? How much material is the apprentice going to waste? And this is why everything is going so slowly in the supply chain, because everybody's trying to de-risk their business. The young apprentices don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to lose a job because they made a mistake. So everything is slowing down to a trickle. And it seems to be this is the kink in the Coke bottle for the supply chain. It's not just materials, it's people. Now, the interesting thing about that is, what do you have in India? You have this amazing labor pool. It's highly skilled, which is highly trainable. And you've got government desire to get into aerospace because it's a fantastic industry in terms of building skills and keeping skills. So the MRO opportunity in India is fantastic. The assembly is potentially fantastic, and even a final assembly line. All that potential is like right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, whether we have a very unique problem, Addison. In fact, we have, as you know, too many people. So it's every task of finding talent takes a longer time trying to sift through, let's say, 100 applications to find the top 10. Yes, but then that's just a teething pain. But once you find those 10, they are incredibly talented. And then your challenge becomes, how do you keep them on? Because they become so attractive to everyone else that everyone wants to, have them join their team. So
Right.
it's a right from our small setup right to the largest manufacturers face very similar problems, that they are always the talent, even though the pool is very large. Out of the larger pool, it's a very small subsection who is extremely talented, let's say uber talented, and the rest are all highly talented, but either don't have the experience, as you're saying. So we have a lot of people who have brilliant CVs, but they need that level of training. And I think that's a fantastic business opportunity for people from around the world to come here and train the locals who may have that qualification but don't have the skill set as of now.
And excuse me, the interesting thing is that when you look at the commercial aviation space, maybe the most logical thing is for actually someone to do a business jet, a light business jet
Yes.
installation, factory, something, because the production rates are slower, but you are getting around that 30% import duty, and you can take the time to make a good product and train the people. And I'm thinking of someone like who would it be? There are only a handful of the companies in the world, but that seems to be a way to get in, is to look at
I
the business
agree.
jet.
I agree. And then you also have that market where you can sell that, the business jet. You don't want one which is very large. You don't want a small um, piston engined aircraft, but you want something in between. And I agree with you.
A light jet would be the thing to look at.
Indeed, indeed, especially in the single engine space.
Right. Nitin, fantastic to catch up with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise, and I hope to do this more often, Addison.
Thank you. Okay.